Welcome listeners to another live broadcast of Pateo Radio. It is Tuesday, March 4th, 2014, and the guest of tonight is Mark Passio, and his website is What on Earth is Happening. Mark, please welcome to the show.
Johan, thank you so much for inviting me onto the show. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, I think it's a real honor that you are here because you do marvelous work, but we'll go into that later on. Maybe for the listeners, can you give a little bit of background information of what kind of life you live and what kind of man you are?
Sure. Well, I'm an activist here in Philadelphia, PA. It's on the east coast of the United States. I do a radio show on Republic Broadcasting every Saturday evening, and I also help to organize. I've helped to organize past conferences, the Free Your Mind 1 and 2 conference here in Philadelphia, and essentially what I talk about is natural law. I talk about the laws of morality and the reason that the world is in the condition that it is. The main thing that I try to get to are the underlying causal factors of what has created the conditions that we are living in right now as a species. And the condition that we are living in right now as a species is slavery. And I tell people about my website that I'm an anti-slavery activist. That usually gets their attention, wakes them up, and gets them asking questions. I tell them that my website is all about slavery and how to end it once and for all. So that's really essentially, in a nutshell, what I do.
Yeah, great. I think we share two passions, Mark. One is truth and the other is order. I've seen a number of your videos, your video presentations, and I admire the way you structure it, and it's so clear, it's so crystal clear, and I love it. I also have that need to make it really structured and orderly, but it's a real pleasure. It's a treat almost to see you present. But the tone of voice is always a little bit, sometimes a little bit harsh and strict. Can you explain that to the people who've not heard you?
Sure. Yeah, my tact with my videos is very straightforward without sugarcoating anything. I feel personally that does people a disservice, because if you structure something to tell people what they want to hear, you're not really explaining to them the things that need to be changed, not in any kind of a way that's making an impact. And that's why I take a lot of umbrage with the New Age movement as they put things out there. If the New Age movement was making a lot of real change in the world, things would be changing on a much faster basis. But what they're doing is they're sugarcoating things, and they're selling people half-truths, and they're giving people what I call feel-good spirituality. Feel-good spirituality is something that is there basically to tell people what they want to hear and to make them sound like changing this world is going to be some kind of an easy thing or some kind of a comfortable thing. I am a realist, and I try to be as honest with people as possible, and also treat people like an adult and not talk to them like, they're some kind of a child that can't handle what they're hearing. So my tact can be somewhat abrasive, but to people who really have a sense of self-positivity, or, they already have a good sense of self-esteem, they're not going to be hearing what I'm saying as any kind of a beatdown. It's not meant to be like that. It's not meant to beat people down. It's meant to basically light a fire under people and just tell them something in a straightforward manner that, again, isn't dumbed down or isn't sugar-coated in any way to make that pill easier to swallow. So I see my tact as really being strong with people, but also just being very forthright and honest about how things really are and what does in fact need to change and telling people that in a very unapologetic way, and that's really all it is.
Yeah, I fully agree, but you're not afraid to even use the BS words to to make your point. But maybe you can go back in time, Mark. Maybe you can explain the audience how you came into contact with understanding that we are not at all free, or that somehow we allowed people to give us the impression that we have to obey the law and all those things. How was your journey into all this?
Well, my journey was a very, very dark one. In my youth, when I was very indoctrinated by cultural religion through my family, and my family was a family that never really questioned the status quo at all, and pretty much accepted what they were taught and then taught that to their children. So I received that religious indoctrination, and I had never really put that into perspective with, the knowledge of what religion was all about, astrotheology, and other studies, because I had lacked that knowledge earlier in my life. And basically, upon realizing that that was a control system and that it was, I was being indoctrinated, upon waking up to that, still lacking the framework of knowledge about, religion and what it really was, that anger all, boiled up in me, and I wanted to gravitate toward the opposite of that. I wanted to find something that was the complete antithesis of organized religion, and I did that by getting involved in dark occultism. So I became involved in Satanism in my youth, and basically, when I started getting involved in a deeper way in some of these satanic organizations and groups such as the Church of Satan, I became aware that these satanic grottos and groups, they were basically psychological filtration grounds for psychopaths. And what the higher ups of these networks were doing was they were grooming people within these organizations to bring them up into their ranks for placement into positions of power. So I realized that they weren't, just working with some occult or hidden knowledge for personal reasons, but they were actually a very tight-knit, eclectic array of people from every social institution, from politics, banking, law, military, media, entertainment, education, medicine, you name the field of endeavor, you name the human institution, and there were people at high-level positions of power in those fields that were Satanists and dark occultists. So when I recognized that these people of influence and power weren't working separately, they were working together toward a common goal, and the goal was to increase their own collective power and influence at the expense of everybody else's freedom. That's really what these dark occult organizations were about and what they were doing, and they were working with political organizations to do just that. They had the same agenda. So when that awareness dawned on me that I had become involved in this at a very low level, again, my level of involvement was not what I would call high whatsoever. I was at the level that interfaces with the human public, with the public to just, find the people that can help them do their agenda, that they might be able to groom up through their ranks with certain skill sets and certain psychological characteristics. When I realized that they were this kind of an organized syndicate and they were acting as a psychological vetting and filtration system for a worldwide system of totalitarian control, my conscience wouldn't allow me to proceed any further with involvement with that. And I said, I'm not going to have anything to do with this anymore. I'm going to pull back my involvement. And people would, often ask, well, when you decided to do that, was there any kind of a lashback against you for saying, I don't want to be involved in this anymore? And the answer is absolutely not. There was nothing. These people were so unconcerned that I didn't want to be involved with them and their agenda anymore. It was as if I never existed. The attitude was, well, take off then, little boy. We don't need you, and you can go and try to tell anybody that you want about what we do, and good luck banging your head against the wall for the rest of your life, because the public are too dumb and brainwashed to even understand anything that we do. So they were completely unconcerned with my leaving. It was as if, again, I never existed to them. And since that day, since that time that I awoke and started understanding what I had become involved with and what the world was really run by, I have been trying to expose it ever since and really talk about the solutions with people, which is changing their mind, changing their worldview, and living in harmony with moral law such that we can actually truly change the manifestation that we're getting here on earth as a result of our collective behavior. So that's the background story to how I came into knowledge of what the world really was, the state that it was in. And, after I got out of that, that's when my real learning process and true full awakening process began, by going into deep knowledge of not the dark occult, but the positive side of hidden knowledge. There is a positive side of the occult. The reason that they call it the occult is because it's hidden. Occult comes from occultare, a verb in Latin, which means to hide. So all occult information is that which has been hidden from public view. It's been hidden from our sight. That's what the word occult means, hidden. It's hidden knowledge that has been hidden deliberately by people who are in control to attempt to create a knowledge differential. If one group of people are very knowledgeable and the other group of people are very ignorant, because that knowledge has been hidden, there's a tremendous power differential that's been created between those two groups of people. That's why dark occultists who use this knowledge to control and manipulate people, that's why they want to keep it hidden at all costs, and they don't want the public to understand it. Because what occult knowledge really is ancient psychology. It is all about how the human psyche works, operates, our intrinsic motivations and desires, and also it is about the laws of nature. So there's a microcosmic body of knowledge to this hidden knowledge called the occult, and that deals with the psyche and how it works. And then there's a macrocosmic body of knowledge which deals with the laws of nature, not only the physical sciences, but particularly the hidden spiritual laws, what I simply call, I group under the umbrella term natural law, which people might call cosmic law or spiritual law or moral law or God's law. It is just simply the laws that govern the result of behaviors. When we enact behaviors through our free will, they are going into dynamic interaction with these moral laws that are existent in the universe, and then we get a result in the world as a result of the collective behavior that we enact as a society, as a species. And these laws are what I attempt to explain to people. That's the very crux, the very basis of my work since coming out of this cultish mind control that I was under when I was earlier in my life, when I was involved with the dark occult. You could say now I am a de-occultist. I try to uncover and diffuse that hidden knowledge to as many people as possible in as free and as open a way as possible, so that people can really understand how we as a species are co-creating our shared reality that we are living in.
Great, Mark. Yeah, we're actually exactly on the same page, because Pateo is Latin for no longer hidden, so it's also a way of de-occulting the truth and the knowledge which has been there for as long as we can remember, I think.
Fantastic! What a great name.
Yeah, I think so too. But maybe to help the listeners understand what you're saying, maybe it's good that you explain the old world order and the new world order, because I think your view on that is really helping us to understand what is going on. Maybe you can clarify that to the listeners.
Oh, absolutely. Well, in the ancient past, this world was basically ruled by the concept or the idea of authority vested in one. I call this concept, and many other researchers have called it, the old world order. In the old world, there was a king or a priest or some type of a combination of the two, a priest, king, a shaman, a dark, member of a dark priest class of some kind. You name it, but it was one person. It was one being, one man, usually, okay? And people basically believed that he was the authority, that he was some sort of an intercessor or intermediary between God or the gods and the people. And his authority was unquestioned. He ruled the society, period. He decided what was good for the people, what wasn't good for the people. He decided how they would live and conduct their lives. He set all laws. He made all laws. He essentially ruled with an iron fist, and his word was law because he was the representative of God on earth. This is what I call the old world order. And again, it's the concept that all authority, quote unquote, because this concept of authority in general is an illusion. So I put authority in quotes there, all right? The authority was vested in one person, one man usually. And this system of control is always backed entirely by violence. It's based in violence, okay? It's all about the threat of violence. If you didn't do what he said, he would have his henchmen come after you, okay? So you're constantly living under duress, the threat of violence. And the society is built upon this completely fake and dogmatic belief system, which is essentially a false religion called authority, that a person can be the master of others, who possesses the moral right to issue commands, while all the other people in that society have the moral obligation as his subjects to obey his commands, to obey the commands of the master. So it's a master-slave relationship, if we're being honest with ourselves. And what do you call a master-slave relationship? That's a situation of slavery. So, you know, when we call it the old world order, or when we call it kingship, or when we call it religious authority, whatever you want to call it, these are all euphemizations. They're trying to make it, you know, this concept sound nice, you know, sound better than it really is. That's what to euphemize something means. So these euphemisms that people use are all just euphemisms for slavery. The real thing that was taking place in the old world, quote unquote, order, okay, there's nothing orderly about it. It's chaos, okay? The real thing that was taking place is slavery. And if we're being honest with ourselves, slavery is chaos. Slavery isn't order. So to even call it the old world order is a misnomer. We should call it the old world chaos, okay? That was how things were in the ancient past, and have always been like that in the ancient past, since humans have even been here on the earth. That's been the system that has been erected. Now, if we look to the modern day, we would think, well, that's gone. That's completely not here anymore. We don't have, you know, one person being the unchallenged ruler of a society, and we don't have kings enshrined on pedestals, you know. So you would think it would be different, but if we really examine it a little bit more closely, it's no different. The old world order has just morphed into something that we call now the New World Order. And again, it's not order. It's just the name people call it. But really, I would call it the new version of the old world chaos, okay? It has absolutely nothing to do with anything that is new, because it's the same old story. It's the same old thing that's been here forever. And it's not orderly. It never has been order. It never will be order for as long as it exists. It's always, slavery is always going to be chaos. But here's what the New World Order is. Now, instead of the idea of authority vested in one ruler, you have the concept that authority can now be vested in a group of people. It can be vested in what you might call an oligarchy, or a small group, okay, that rules over a much larger group. So this system is, of course, called government. And people believe that there's such a thing as authority vested in government, because they believe that authority can be within people, and those people can somehow magically grant this authority to this small group of people called government, rights that they don't themselves possess or could do to other people. You know, they believe that they can magically transfer these non-existent rights to other people, call that authority based in a group. So this is the concept of government, of course, which constitutes the New World Order. And again, it's the same system. It's a system that's based and backed entirely in violence. There's no reason, no higher order thought rules to this. It's 100% completely based in violence and the threat of violence if you don't comply. And it's a system that's built on, again, a false and dogmatic belief system, which constitutes a false religion, of authority, and that authority is that a group of the concept of authority is that a group of people can possess the moral right to issue commands to other people as a master group, a group that constitutes a master class, which is the lawmaking class. Okay, while all others in the society are their subjects, who have a moral obligation to obey the commands that they issue, that they call laws now. They don't call it the decrees of the king anymore. Now we call it laws in a society that's ruled by government. If we are honest with ourselves and not euphemizing and not trying to rationalize immoral behavior, which is violence, okay? The behavior we're talking about here is that this entire thing is backed by violence. That's the immoral behavior I'm talking about. If we're not rationalizing those things and we're honest with ourselves, this is another form of slavery. The names have just changed, and we're now euphemizing things, calling it government, and we're vesting the quote-unquote authority, the concept of authority, the belief in authority is not vested in one person, it's now vested in a group of people. And it's backed by their enforcers that we call police and military. So nothing has changed if we're being honest. Again, that caveat I like to give because most people lie to themselves continuously. They're never honest with themselves. They always want to euphemize and rationalize everything. And they don't actually look at what is. They want to look at what they want it to be, what they think that it is, instead of what it actually is. And what it actually is nothing different than the old world order. The new world order of government is the exact same system with different names, with the quote-unquote authority just vested into a group of people, diffused into a group. It's the same system of slavery that has always existed in this world. So it is, the new world order is slavery, the old world order is slavery. There's really nothing new about the New World Order, so I call it the new form of the old world chaos, because that old form of chaos, of slavery, stopped really working, and people stopped believing in the authority of one being. Then that system just said, okay, you don't believe in the authority of one being, we're going to get you to believe in the authority of a group of people, and they'll rule over you in proxy. Okay, for very, very tiny, tiny groups of powerful men and financiers and bankers and dark occultists. So nothing has changed. It's the exact same system, just with a different moniker. And now we call, instead of kingship, which was really a euphemism for slavery, now we have a new euphemism for slavery, and it's called government.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same thing, but it's a little bit more clever, because now people think they can vote and they actually have influence on the way they are, their enslavement is being ruled over.
That's right.
But it's in fact the same thing. And a lot of people are thinking, yeah, the New World Order is something to come. When we look at the speech from George Bush Sr., I think it was 1990, he said that there's time for a new world order, and people are waiting for that. But when we look at the $1 bill, then maybe what they are trying to say is the New World Order has already been is already here, and that's why I like your explanation so much, because that is in fact the New World Order, or chaos, or how you like to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely already here. I wouldn't say it's 100% completed, but it's here. The system is in place. They want to get 100% control over every aspect of people's lives, because they don't have that 100% total control, specifically here in America, where firearms are still very proliferous and very much in the hands of the public. See, that is a knife sticking in their craw. They can't accept that. That means that the slaves of this society would still be capable of rebellion, okay? And that's why they want the whole world disarmed, so that it is impossible for their subject population to ever rebel against the master class, okay? And they're never going to get that done here in America. So the New World Order is never going to be completely completed. It's never going to be finished, because this country is never going to lay down their firearms without a battle, okay? So good luck getting that fully in place, because while it may be largely in place, you're never going to get it 100% complete here, not without enormous bloodshed, not without it being such a costly victory that it's going to seem like a defeat to the people who try to get that done. So, the concept of this symbolism that they have of the pyramid, the pyramidal structure, if you look at this symbol, okay, with the all-seeing eye. That eye is a symbol of the light of God. People have it very wrong when they look at that as just a unidimensional thing where they see that as the elite of the world that is trying to rule over the pyramid. That is one interpretation, but you have to look at the interpretation in the scene that's depicted on the back of the $1 bill as what would happen if that pyramid were finished. See, that's that capstone that isn't quite finished. The last stones aren't yet put in place on the New World Order. So if that pyramid was finished, the light of God would be blocked out from the world forever. Okay, that concept of the eye of providence, the eye of the creator of the universe, meaning the creator's light, the creator's will, the creator's law, would be blocked out if we finished that pyramid in stone. Conversely, if we brought that pyramid down by taking the bricks away or transmuting those bricks into light, you wouldn't have any blocks or barriers to the light in the form of the stone of ignorance, which is what that pyramid represents. And so it is a dual symbol. It can, if you look at it one way, in being finished, the stone being finished, it's acting as the complete blocking out of the light. And you could look at that eye then as the light being blocked out, but you could also look at it as this hidden elite that then rules from behind the pyramid, okay, unseen by the ignorant population. And again, conversely, if we look at it the other way, that it's the eye of providence, and it's trying to join with the world, but these stones or barriers or blocks to it coming down to the earth and joining with the earth, then our goal as agents of change need to be to take down those barriers, those blocks to the light, and then allow the will and the law of the creator of the universe to join with the earth. And that is essentially what my mission has been over the last decade of my life. And again, that's what I attempt to convey to people. What is the law of creation? What is the moral law that ultimately governs behavior of intelligent beings, and what I simply group under the umbrella term natural law?
Yeah, and key to that natural law is the concept of do no harm. Maybe you can explain that the natural law is in fact really short, and it's not many books. It's just really simple. So how would you explain that, Mark?
Yeah, natural law, people ask me, well, where can I go to read all about natural law? And I say, well, you know, it's not really written down. It's not law that gets written down. This is law that exists in the cosmos. It exists in the universe. It's universal law. It's non-man-made. Man doesn't make this up arbitrarily or write it down. It's binding. It has an effect. Whether we understand it or not, whether we agree with it or not, we are bound by it, just like we are bound by physical laws. And then it's immutable. Nothing man ever does is going to change the fact that natural law is in place, because the universe put it in place. The creator of the universe put it in place. And what it does is it governs the consequences of behavior. And it's very simple how it works, okay? I call this the law of freedom. As people are more moral, they become more free. As they become more immoral, they become more enslaved. That's really natural law in a nutshell. It is simply the concept that we do not do actions to other people that we would not want done to us. Actions that are harmful should not be done. That basically physically harm somebody else, defraud them of their property, etc. It's basic respect for other people and their property, and not taking initiative, aggressive action against people. So it's the non-aggression principle. It's the principle that you should not initiate violence against your fellow beings. If you don't do that, everything will be fine. The problem is so many people are convinced that the initiation of violence against other people is actually necessary. They'll say that they don't believe in that, but then in the same breath they'll tell you that they believe in government, which is the initiation of violence against other people. It's a monopoly on the initiation of violence against other people, if we're being honest with ourselves. So they'll tell you that they don't believe in that, and yet they'll tell you in another breath that they do, because they're euphemizing that behavior by calling it government. So natural law is just essentially the universal and non-man-made conditions that are already in effect in the universe that govern the dynamics of consciousness and free will. Free will, we have free will, okay, but it is actually ultimately governed by something else. We can choose free will behavior to act in harmony with natural law or in opposition to natural law. And again, then we get a result. If it's in harmony with natural law, that means that it's moral behavior. And then we get the result called freedom. If our free will behaviors that we enact are in opposition to natural law, we get a different result. And that result is called enslavement. So while there is free will, there is no free will without consequence. Making the decision to enact a behavior through our free will choice always gives us a particular consequential result in the material realm, in the realm of manifestation, the manifested reality that we then must live in. So we make our bed through our free will choices, and then we have to live in the result. The result is the manifested result that happens in the world, the manifestation, and that's the condition of either freedom or enslavement. And because we're not changing our thinking, and we're not changing the behaviors that we enact through changing our thinking, of course, we keep getting the same result down through the centuries, which is enslavement. And what I teach about natural law is how to reverse our thinking, to put it into alignment with morality, so that ultimately the human species can generate a condition of freedom here on Earth.
Yeah, great. Let's make it a little bit more practical, Mark, because I think in theory everybody can agree with you once they understand what kind of game we're into and what we allowed to be played on us. But for instance, how do you do with taxation and licenses and all those things? Can you give us an explanation how you deal with the government in your state in the USA?
Sure. Well, I try to, as much as possible, ignore it and just live according to the laws of nature, not the laws of man. So a lot of times that can be difficult. I personally, refuse to pay taxes on any monies that I take in. I don't voluntarily take a job that withholds taxes. Now, that's very difficult for a lot of people to do. As somebody who's just simply self-employed, I just don't file any paperwork, and I don't work for any employer that withholds any money. I just refuse to do that. I will not do it. So I realize not everybody's in a position to be able to do something like that, but to the extent that you can, that's what I would choose. But a lot of people just, have to understand that these things that we euphemize and we call taxation is just another form of slavery. And, the reason they don't understand that in many cases is because they're not looking at it from a very simple perspective. Their mind automatically goes to, well, what's going to be done with the money? And what if that money wasn't there? Then what would happen? See, they're not looking at the behavior of the collection of taxes. And this is what I try to explain to people. Stop letting your mind go ahead of the situation and say, well, we must have this particular situation in effect. What this is called is the ends justifies the means. That's what that ideology is called. If all you're thinking about is, well, if tax money wasn't collected, how would we have money for schools, for children? If tax money wasn't collected, how would we have money to repair roads? If tax monies weren't collected, how would we have money to collect sanitation, to collect, garbage, to keep sanitation in place in cities? Mm-hmm. And so you're looking at the ends that you want to be in effect. And what you're not looking at is the means to put those ends into effect. So when you say that has to be done through taxation, and then taxation is okay to do because you want these things in effect the way they are now, what you're basically saying is that the ends justify the means. That's a very immoral road to go down, because then anything you want put into place, you can justify by any immoral behavior, as long as the end result is so-called good or so-called orderly. Okay? We're talking about the behavior on its face, up front. You have to look at the behavior that is required for doing that thing. Okay? So, you want roads to be built and maintained. And we're going to say everybody's responsible for that, so everybody must contribute to that, whether they volunteer it or not. Well, what happens if someone doesn't volunteer for that? What happens if someone says, I don't agree that I have to pay this much to put roads into effect and maintain them? Well, if you don't agree, you don't have free will choice. We're going to send somebody then to confiscate the product of your labor. And that's what taxation is. Taxation is the threat of force to have your labor confiscated, whether you agree for what it's going to be used for, the amount that it's going to be used for, or whether you have to contribute to that or not. It is, in other words, something that is non-voluntary, and it is conducted under the threat of duress, the threat of violence. Duress is the threat of violence being done to somebody. And if you don't pay taxes, people will say, we'll come and take your property, we'll come and take the product of your labor, will come and take your freedom possibly and put you into a cage or a holding cell until you agree to pay the amount that we arbitrarily decide. If we're being honest with ourselves, that's what taxation is. It's the concept that some group or authority has been given the right, quote unquote, because it's not a right at all, it's obviously a wrongdoing under duress, under the threat of violence, but it's the belief that some people can give this group called government the right to confiscate an arbitrarily chosen percentage of the product of somebody else's labor. And it's enforced under the threat of violence through bodily harm or imprisonment, anybody who tries to resist that confiscation. And again, the way that we do it is it's justified. Justification means turned into a right or made into a right. It comes from the Latin language. Jus in Latin means right, as in a moral right, and then Jus, and then, or in classical Latin it would be spelled ius. Jus means right in Latin. Mm-hmm. And then the second part of the word justification, justify, it comes from faceo facere, which means to make or to create. So justification means to create a right, to make up a right. And we're justifying that taxation is a right by saying, oh, it needs to be done to put these particular scenarios or particular manifestations in place. Again, this justification is known as the ends justifies the means. And the means is violence. If we're being honest with ourselves, that's what taxation is. And ultimately what I would call it is slavery, because if we define slavery as the confiscation of 100% of the product of somebody else's labor, then I ask people to tell me what percentage you could lower that number down to no longer make it slavery anymore. Could you lower it down to 90% and then magically it wouldn't be slavery? If 100% of the confiscation of somebody else's efforts was slavery, we would all be in agreement that that's slavery. Mm-hmm. Well, would 90% no longer be slavery? Would 75% no longer be slavery? If you just said only 50% of what you make belongs to me, would that then not be slavery anymore? What if you said 25%? You must give me 25% of the product of your labor to do whatever I want with it, whether you agree or not, involuntarily, and you have no choice. Is that no longer slavery? No. You can see there's no percentage except zero that you could lower that to that would make it no longer slavery anymore. That's what people have to understand when it comes to taxation. We could say the same thing about licenses and permits, begging the state, this quote-unquote authority, permission to do something that's a natural right. I give people the example of, well, first of all, just owning firearms in certain places. You have to beg the state permission. Okay, here in the United States, luckily that's not been put through. We could still openly own firearms and keep them in our homes. But in a lot of places you have to ask the state permission to own a firearm. In a lot of places you can't own a firearm at all. Well, how can an action be right in one place and wrong in another? How could it be a right for a human being in one place and in other places somehow magically these other human beings don't have that right, and if they did that behavior it would somehow be immoral? a behavior is either moral or immoral. It doesn't matter whether something is legal or illegal, because a law in a particular place may be something that is in harmony with natural law of morality, and it may be something that's in opposition to natural law and morality. Either to own a firearm for personal defense and the defense against tyranny is a natural right, or it's not a natural right. And I'm telling everybody it is a natural right. Everybody has that right, regardless of what their government tells them. The government is telling you what they want the policy to be in that area. It has absolutely nothing to do with morality. All of the laws of man are morally relative. And moral relativism will get you more slavery, which is ultimately what's being put into effect by the laws of man. So, I give people the example, let's say in an area where you need a permit to put a firearm on your person concealed. Well, how is that somehow a wrongdoing? If I put a pistol in my belt line or in a holster and put my shirt down over it or put a jacket on over top of it, okay, and you can't see that, and I walk outside and I go to, let's say I go to a store and I buy some items, I leave the store, I come home, I go back to my house, who was harmed? Who did I harm through that actual behavior, that action? See, people want to say, oh, this is what's deemed acceptable or legal in this particular area. The question needs to be, who was harmed by the behavior? It's like putting a substance into your body. People will say, well, we have to make drugs illegal. We have to make prohibition laws in effect. Well, who was harmed by me putting a substance into my body that the state deemed illegal if I did no action that actually harmed anybody after doing it? See, people have to separate the action from whatever you might do after it. So if I put a concealed firearm on my person and then went out and took it out and brandished it against the first person that walked down the street and robbed them, of course that would be an immoral behavior. No one has the right to do that. But if I simply conceal the firearm, what do I need to beg the state permission for to conceal a firearm? That's a moral behavior if I've harmed no one. The action has to be looked at. Again, if I put something into my body that the state deems is off limits, let's say I put an opiate derivative pill in my body that they say is a prescription-only substance, and I may not possess it. Okay, if I put that in my body and then go out into the world and do some things, and then don't harm anybody and come back to my house, I've harmed no one. That's the behavior you have to look at. If a heroin junkie bangs some heroin and falls asleep, they've harmed nobody. You could say they've harmed themselves, but their body is their own property. So you could do what you want with your own property, okay? So, but if I take some PCP and I go out and go on a rampage and start, beating whoever I think, I don't like, you have to judge the behavior that I just did. The behavior is unacceptable and immoral. It has nothing to do with me taking the PCP. Somebody could take PCP and sit in their homes, sit in their house and do nothing, and somebody might, drink a bunch of alcohol, which is legal, quote unquote, and they might go out and then harm somebody, or they might beat their wife, which is a completely immoral behavior that you did while on a legal substance. So legality has nothing to do with morality, and people need to just simply understand that. They need to come off the brainwashing that somehow legality or illegality equals morality or immorality. It absolutely does not. Sometimes it comes into coincidence with those concepts, but in general, man's law is morally relativistic, and it is the whim of legislators. What they say is policy in a particular area. That's what the law is. The law is their policy in a particular region. That's why here in Philadelphia, I can own certain types of firearms with certain accessories, magazines, etc., okay? And then you cross an imaginary border called a state line into another state here in America, in this state, it's Pennsylvania. You cross over into another state just east of here called New Jersey, and every firearm that I own is illegal in New Jersey. And I could be jailed if I were, let's say, 10 miles to the east of where I'm at right now, or less. I would be jailed for owning possessions just for owning them, okay, that I own today in my house. Not 10 miles away to the east, if I took those possessions, I would be thrown in a cage. Now, how could that possibly be moral in one place and immoral in another place? Not to mention, how does somebody over there have less rights than we do over here? How could I magically have any more rights than any other human being? It doesn't make any logical or common sense if we're being honest with ourselves. But if you want to rationalize and believe that man's law is necessary and isn't slavery, or isn't the arbitrary whims of the masters in any given particular domain, okay, that we want to demarcate by these imaginary lines called borders, okay, on maps, okay, if we don't euphemize anymore, we understand the real concept that's at work here is slavery. But not only that, it's slavery that's backed by moral relativism, the idea that man gets to make up what rights and wrongs are. They're not etched in stone in the universe. They're not laws that are put into effect by the universe, by creation. Okay? We get to make up what right and wrong are. We're the arbiters of law. We're the arbiters of truth. Don't you know? And we get to make up, based on our personal preferences and whims, what right and wrong are in any given society. It has nothing to do with whether that behavior actually harms another person. No, it's policy set by lawmakers in that particular region. And you know what this is? It's called moral relativism. And moral relativism only can create slavery. The slavery system in any place where slavery has existed has always been put into place and maintained, in effect, by moral relativism being entrenched in the minds of the people. A free people cannot be a morally relativistic people. A free people definitively understand the objective difference between right and wrong behavior and always willfully choose the right behavior over the wrong behavior, because they clearly recognize the difference and the distinction between those two modalities of behavior. Until people live in that capacity, meaning a truly moral capacity, understanding definitively in knowledge, which is conscience, common sense knowledge, the definitive objective difference between right and wrong, and then they willfully choose for themselves through an exercise of that conscience, an exercise of that knowledge between right and wrong, the right action over the wrong action. A society can, not only will it not be free, it can not be free.
Excellent point, Mark. Yeah, that's the beauty of what you call natural law. It's so crystal clear, and it's you don't. Yeah, you feel immediately that it's true, and that's right. And everything that has been created here to keep us in this kind of illusion is the opposite of that. So I really think it's really good that you point this out. So what you're saying in essence is it's an individual journey, because you try to ignore the government and all the rules and regulations as much as you can. I'm doing exactly the same. I don't pay taxes either, and so on. But I think it will take some time before enough people are doing that to make the system break down. How do you see the future? How will we get into a state of civilization where all people know that the morality is the law and not what has been written down on paper?
Yeah, my view of this is extraordinarily dark, Johan, and a lot of people are not going to be happy by even hearing my view of the future. I don't see people changing in anywhere near the numbers that are going to be required to get this great change accomplished peacefully. I see people clinging on mercilessly to the existing system because of their fear, because that's all they know, and because we do not have enough voices that are telling them the truth. The voice of truth is so weak, it is so paltry, that the people who are somewhat moral beings have failed the world so completely in coming forward and unapologetically speaking the truth to people. The people who are doing this are doing wonderfully. They're doing such a great job in the alternative media, in shows like what you're doing, okay? The people who are doing it are doing a great job. The problem is there's so few people doing that work. The people who are just learning all of this stuff and keep listening and listening and listening, and they think they understand what the world is. If you're not actively doing the things that we're doing, you're not involved in correcting the problem. And people hate to hear that. They hate it when I say this, okay? Because that instills guilt. And ding, 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 that's what it's supposed to be doing. There is such a thing as blame and guilt. And I'm trying to explain to people the reason we're in this mess is because the people who did have some semblance of morality sat back and were just content to allow evil to run amok in the world without saying anything, because that was uncomfortable. That was going to create division. That was going to create tension. They got afraid of tension between people. Instead of going right up in somebody's face and saying, no, you're wrong, you don't have these rights, this isn't right, this isn't moral, and I'm going to speak it. And then speaking that to other people so that they would understand that that wasn't right. They sat back timidly and they let things go. That's one of the reasons we're in the mess that we're in now. And what I'm trying to explain to people is that all the people who think that they have a handle on what's going on and aren't actively, openly speaking out against the iniquities in our world, you're not really doing anything. See, I tell people, you want to know how I could tell whether or not you're doing the great work? Everybody can check everybody else as to whether they're doing the great work, okay? And when I say the great work, I mean the work of changing this world. People will say, we're not here to change the world. Bull. We are here to change this world and end slavery on it. It is bull. It is New Age bull to tell people that we're not here to change the world. That is what our mission is. That is what our spiritual mission is. And yes, I can say that definitively knowing it. I know that's what it is. I'm not telling you that's what it is because that's my belief or that's what I think it is. Our mission is to change this world and end slavery, not to live for some world hereafter, okay? Not to just change ourselves. That's not the mission. That's a means to the end. The end is to change this world's conditions. It's not just to change ourselves. That's some New Age hokum, okay? That it's just only about changing yourself. It's not about actually changing anybody else or changing the world. Nonsense. It 100% absolutely is about helping other people to change so that this world can change. And so all the people who think that they're awake, all the people who think that they, quote, get it, all the people who think that they're, quote, spiritually aware and aren't doing the great work, you're still asleep. You're still completely asleep. And here's how you can tell. There is a method by which anybody can check anybody else regarding what they are doing regarding the great work of changing this world and ending slavery. It's a little thing called Google. You could type somebody's name in double quotes inside of Google, search engine, or any other search. Go to Start Page if you don't like Google. Any search engine you want will do. Type the person's name, their full name in double quotes, and then let's see what results you get back. And I get people constantly, all day long, they write to me and they say, Mark, this is what you should talk about. You should talk about this. You should bring up this topic. You should bring up this researcher. You should bring up this field of endeavor. And you know what I say? No, I shouldn't do anything. You should do that. You think it's important? You bring it up. You want to take this approach? Then go do that approach. The problem is, you know what it is, Johan? They're cowards.
Yes.
And I just say it the way it really is. I'm not here to sugarcoat. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm not here to be popular. I'm not here to be liked. I don't care who hates me. I don't care how unpopular I am for saying the truth. Okay? I'm not here to win a popularity contest or a contest to see who can garner more friends than the other person. I'm not interested in people's friendship. I'm interested in communicating the truth and taking action and using their real name, okay? Go online, start your own website, pay somebody if you don't know how to do it. It's real simple to pay somebody to build a website for you. You know, I could do that too, okay? I don't do that work for free because you know how much work is involved in building somebody a website? More than you understand, more than most people understand the work involved in actually putting a full website together, okay? So you know what to do. You save up some money that you would have normally put toward, you know, I don't know, going out to a movie or going out to dinner one night, and you pay somebody to build you a website, okay? Or you lobby a radio station to get on air, you know, make some podcasts up and just put them online. Go to Blog Talk. Blog Talk's free. Blog Talk is free, folks. Start your Blog Talk radio show on Blog Talk Radio, okay? blogtalkradio.com. Go sign up for free. Go start your own radio blog, okay? Then you can pitch that blog to other networks if you want to get a wider audience and say, hey, here's what I've done on Blog Talk. Let me onto your network. If you have a great show, you'll probably get on some kind of a bigger network, okay? That's how you do it. You put your name out there and you do it publicly, not just talking to some people around you, not just trying to convince your mom or convince your sister or your brother, okay? You do that too, but you have to go public. And the way you go public today isn't by, you know, printing up some fanzines or something. It isn't by, you know, posting some notes on a Post-it board at your local community center. It's by going online. You go public. The internet is the public forum. That's the worldwide public forum that you could spread ideas through. So the problem is these people are cowards. They don't want to put their name out there. They don't want to draw any attention to themselves because they're still under the impression, they're still under the mindset that, hey, the first nail up is the first one that gets hit down by the hammer. And they're cowards. They don't want to really do the great work. And they want to tell other people how it should be done. Well, you know what? I'm doing it. I'm not telling other people. I've never once... Ladies and gentlemen who are listening, and particularly people who may go to my website and listen to these podcasts, these interviews that I do on other shows, I never once in my life ever wrote to another host or researcher and told them this is what you should be doing. I never even once wrote to them and said, hey, you got this wrong. All I did was say, I'm going to put out the information that I'm going to put out there, and I'm going to do it better than them because I think my way I could do better than them. And if they got a particular piece of research wrong, I'm going to talk about it in what I feel is the right way. I didn't write to them and waste time and energy trying to tell them what they got wrong. I put out the information that I felt was pertinent and important to understand to people by going public and doing it myself. Well, guess what? If you have something valuable to contribute, that's what you should do. Don't waste time writing to other researchers or radio show hosts saying, hey, I need to tell you about this. You got to cover this. You cover it. Why waste time? You wasted the time writing to one person that's not going to bother to host your comment or your area of research, okay? So you wasted time writing an email. And then it didn't get out there to anybody because, again, I have my work that I'm going to cover that I feel is the most important. I may not always feel what you have to bring up as the most important, okay, thing. Or something that I may not get to. It may be important, but I may not get to it for years, okay? Because other stuff I feel is more important than that, and that's what I'm going to cover, okay? So instead of wasting time writing to me or other researchers telling them you got to look at this, you got to cover this, you could have gotten a Blog Talk Radio site or a free WordPress blog or something to that effect that's free, a blog site, and you could have posted the information for the entire world to see, and then started spreading it via social networking sites, and putting submitting the site to all search engines. You could have done that, but instead you wasted your time trying to get somebody else to cover the material you want covered. So what I tell these people is, if you want to get information out to people widely and freely, have to go online, you have to build your own site, and you have to start your own radio show online. That's the modern media. Or write your own book. Hey, people do still read a lot less frequency and volume than maybe they did in the past because we have new forms of media. But write a book then if you want to get it out in that form of media. Whatever it is, whatever form of media, you have to put the information out there openly, widely, and freely, and do it in a way where I can Google your name and get some results to help to see what you're doing. That's how you can gauge whether somebody is doing the great work or not. And again, whenever I usually Google these people's names, Johan, nada, nothing, zilch, zero, nothing ever comes up. They'll write to me to suggest all this stuff. Then when I say, hey, what is this person doing? What have they done? If they think this is really powerful, valuable information, have they shared it with the world? And you know what the answer always is? Nothing. Almost invariably. Very occasionally you'll get somebody with a blog or a website. Almost invariably. There's nothing online that they have ever put online. Okay, you might get some Facebook pages by them. Whoa, Facebook, you know, but they don't actually put anything out there. They want to tell other people to do it because they want to hide. They want to hide behind a facade, behind the keyboard. Hiding behind the keyboard is what I call this, okay? You'll type out a message and spend all day crafting a message to tell me what I should cover, but you won't come out behind that keyboard anonymously and actually put information out into the world yourself under your own name, though, will you? Okay? And again, what this dynamic is cowardice. And that's the problem. Until more people come forward, to go back to the original question, and start doing the great work of putting the truth out there for other people in as openly and as freely a way as possible, do not expect change on a mass scale. We don't have enough people doing the great work. We don't have enough people speaking the truth. The truth's voice is swamped by the voice of lies. It's swamped by the voices of deception. It's swamped by the voices that advocate slavery, okay? And the way I see things going is so many people who are still in that mindset of supporting and condoning slavery are going to cling on to this immoral system with their dying breaths so much that it is going to take nothing short of a global bloody revolution, physical armed revolution, to overthrow the existing system, and it may or may not be successful. But when it's all said and done, the costs of it are going to be so costly that it's going to feel like a defeat. Even if it was successful and we take down the entrenched power structures, it's going to feel like a defeat, and people are going to be so demoralized because so many people are going to have to give their lives to get it done that it's going to almost seem like it wasn't even worth it, because we are refusing the change in consciousness. We are refusing the change in consciousness. The change in consciousness doesn't mean that you understand that the slavery system is in place. The change in consciousness means that you are actively doing something to break it down. Openly, globally, not just talking to your mom or dad. Okay? It's putting the information out there openly so that the world can understand it in every single medium that you could possibly put it in. If you don't like the web, if you don't want to blog, if you don't want to make a blog talk show, write a book. If you don't write, then make a video. If you don't make a video, make some podcast audio. Whatever. There's so many media. Make art. It doesn't make a difference how you do it. There's tons of ways. Graphic novels, comics, whatever. Okay? There's so many different forms of media that you can communicate this knowledge through. The problem is not enough people are doing it. As long as that dynamic stays in effect, expect slavery to remain and expect any challenge that comes to this system, okay, possibly in the form of doing this in a physical way because it's not getting done in consciousness, at least not in a large enough scale. Expect that to be such a great cost that even if it is successful, it feels like a defeat. And that's what I see the future as. I see the future going in the form of this system will not relent, it will not back down. People are going to back it up. People are going to support it. People are going to cling onto it with their dying breath. It's going to come to physical armed conflict in the future at some point, and there's going to be blood in the street, the likes of which humanity has never witnessed. That's where I see the human future. And that's not a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's not where I see it, because that's where I want it to go. Every single piece of work that I put forward, ladies and gentlemen, is to try to avert a catastrophe like that. I do not want to see it to go like that. I am trying to avert that by putting all of the myriad knowledge and pieces of information that I have gathered and put together and put forward out into the public. I have done that work to avert that horrific scenario. I do not want to see that occur. What I'm explaining to people is what Johan asked me. What is my view of how it actually is going? Not sugarcoating it, not telling you what you want to hear. Okay? If you want to see it happen differently than what I've just laid out, the dark scenario that I feel it's going toward, then you have to get involved in putting the information about truth out there to people, to putting the information about this slavery system out there so that we end it peacefully. Unless that information reaches way, way, way more people's eyes and ears, okay, we're not going to see this happen peacefully. The most recent numbers, here's what I can tell you, and I'm not telling you me alone, my information is the gauge of this, but it just gives people a real easy example to understand numerically, okay? My natural law seminar, I feel, is the concrescence of this information. It is this information boiled down to probably as simple of a way as you're going to ever hear it presented. Okay? I have never seen a presentation done like this, and I'm not trying to just toot my own horn. I'm trying to just simply explain. I've never seen the information of natural law aggregated and presented in as simple a fashion as I did it in my natural law seminar. You can look this up on my website, whatonearthishappening.com. You can go to the videos page, and you can watch the first 3 videos there. It's an 8.5-hour approximately seminar on natural law that I gave in late 2013 on video. So I highly recommend for people to check that out. Now, the amount of people that have actually watched that whole seminar all the way through comprises, now are you ready for this number? 1/10,000th of 1%. That means if 10,000, the amount of times more people watched it. So the amount of people that have watched it now, you need 10,000 times more people to watch it. We would be at 1% of the human population. Think about that. Yeah, we are at 1/10,000th of 1% of people who have really gone through the knowledge of natural law, at least by watching it and taking it in. And I'm not telling you that's how many people understand it. Because many people can watch that seminar, even watch it all the way through, and definitely not integrate that knowledge and truly understand it. They may even say they understand it and don't really get it. But even if all the people who have watched it understand it, we're at 1/10,000th of 1%. And again, I'm not the only factor that you would have to take in. Obviously, there are many people who may understand natural law that have never even heard of me. Okay? I'm not saying that you would just base that number based on me. But let's just say we were at 1/100th of 1%, or even 1/10th of 1%. Do you think that number is going to be sufficient in order to make humanity change? See, this is where the New Age movement blows smoke up people's rear end. They want to tell people that it's only going to take a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of people to get the whole world to change their behavior. Wrong. Absolutely incorrect, wrong. And it's telling people what they want to hear, so they'll keep listening to them. See, I run the risk constantly by what I'm saying of offending people and having them turn me off and turn me out, shut me out. Okay? But I keep saying it. You want to know why? Because it's true. It has nothing to do with whether people listen to me or not. I don't care whether you listen to me or not. All I care about is whether you understand the truth or not. This is going to require numbers. This change is a quantum shift. Quantum means amount in Latin, where that word came from. The word quantum in Latin means an amount of something. So for a quantum shift in humanity to take place, an amount of humanity constituting the majority is going to have to change the way they think and stop doing what they've been doing. No one wants to hear this because they want to hear we can continue to do what we've been doing, don't you know? And somehow magically there's going to be a different result on the other side. We're going to change the manifested result, yeah. But yet we're not going to change the behavior that underlies the result. We're going to keep that behavior in place, and magically the result's going to be something different. You know what this is called? Classical insanity. The classical idea of insanity is that you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and magically you're going to expect the result to change. The results that you get are going to be different, even though you're doing the same thing you always have been. That's called being a very, very, very insane human being, believing that that can happen. It cannot happen that way. For the manifestation to change, you have to do different behavior. You have to stop doing the behavior that you were doing and start doing a different behavior. And this is what nobody who comes from the New Age school, okay, of thought wants to understand. They want to think the whole world, except for a tiny group of people who understand the right way, okay, can keep doing those bad immoral things, those bad immoral behaviors, and magically this tiny, tiny group of people is going to change the world en masse. It doesn't happen that way, folks. That's not how the great work gets done. The people who are telling you that want to line their pockets with the money that you'll give them because they're giving you nice, cheap, comfortable answers that are what you want to hear so that you'll flow money to them. Okay? I'm not going to do that because I don't care who gives me money and who doesn't. That's not what I do this for. I don't do this for money. I don't do it for popularity. I don't do it to be liked. I don't do it to make friends. I do this to try to change the world and end slavery. That's my spiritual mission. That's what I'm here to do. I can't do it alone. I never claimed I could. Okay? We need way, way, way more people doing what we are doing. We cannot do this alone. The great work must be joined. It must be joined. Okay? The people who aren't joining it are part of the problem dynamic. And that's people hear that as me saying, if you're not doing what I'm doing, then you're part of the problem. And the answer to that is yes. Yes, that is what I'm saying. What I am saying is if you're not doing what I'm doing, you're part of the problem. Okay? It's very harsh to just come out and say it like that, but that's the truth. Okay? And I'm not saying don't continue to do the other things that you do. I do more things than just come on radio shows. I do more things than just make presentations. Okay? But while I am doing those things, I'm still communicating information too to people. Whenever I'm around people, I'm communicating this information. I'm not telling you to stop volunteering at a soup kitchen or stop volunteering at an animal shelter. Okay? Do all those things. Do all the things in life that you have to do to maintain life on a daily basis. I'm not telling you to stop those things. What I'm telling you is if you're not actively involved in putting this information out in any kind of a way that is universal, that is global, meaning online, you're not actively involved in the solution. You have to speak out globally. Act locally, speak out globally. Okay? The things I do in my personal life, they're local. They're here. They affect the people I'm around. Okay? Or wherever I go. But then my voice carries globally. It's universal. It's all over this planet. Anybody that goes to my website can listen to all the knowledge I put forward. And until people are doing that in mass, the world situation in mass is going to remain exactly as it is. The truth needs a bigger and stronger voice, a much bigger and much stronger voice. And if we want to see this dynamic not have to go in a very, very dark direction, that's what I see having to be done. if we don't do that, I see the scenario that I laid out with people clinging on to the old dying system until their dying breath, supporting it, condoning it, clinging on to it for dear life, and then that making this transition that we're trying to go through in consciousness have to be done in the purely physical sense. And when it happens that way, it's not really a victory. It would ultimately be, we may get it done, but again, the victory, quote unquote victory, is going to feel like a defeat. That's how I see the future.
Thank you very much for this powerful speech, Mark. It was a real delight to hear you say all those things, which I'm fully on the same page as you are. But I love your energy and the drive you have to make it really clear to people. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I think we are 15 minutes over already, but it's okay because there is not another show after this one. So I give you a few minutes to give a final word if you want, and then we have to close the show.
Absolutely. Sorry for going over, Johan.
No, it's okay. The opportunity is there, so you took it with both hands, and that's okay. It's great.
Thank you so much for inviting me onto the show. For people who have listened and who want to hear more and want to understand more about natural law and more about occult knowledge, you can go to my website, whatonearthishappening.com, and I highly recommend when you go there, you can check out the videos. The natural law video is very, very crucial. I recommend watching that one in its entirety. And my podcast section is where I highly recommend people to begin, because it is a tapestry of information, okay? And if you listen from number one, go back to number one of the podcast and listen forward in order at your own pace. If you do that, the worldview tapestry that this podcast is all about will come into form, and it will make sense. And suddenly things that you had a lot of questions about, you will receive answers to. Okay, and I'm not saying I have all the answers, but certainly a lot of them are there on that podcast. That's the bulk of the material. That's the critical material on that website. Whatonearthishappening.com is my site. You could also check me out every Saturday from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Time on the Republic Broadcasting Network. That's where I do my weekly radio show. So, Johan, once again, I want to thank you so much for inviting me onto your show, and great work that you are doing, sharing all of this knowledge and information with people. You keep it up, and thank you so much for what you do.
Great. It was a real delight, Mark. Thank you very much for your time and for sharing this all with us. Listeners, thank you very much for listening to Pateo Radio. Next week, my guest is Jay Whitener, and we'll talk about the Argons. Thank you very much, and hope you'll tune in again. Bye-bye.